Three cases stand out in the landscape of unsolved mysteries. They are separated by decades and continents, yet they are linked by a core of baffling concrete facts. The Sodder children. A house fire consumed their home. No remains of 5 children were ever recovered. The Somerton man. Found on an Australian beach, carrying no identification. A hidden scrap reading Tamum Shud. The Jameson family. Their locked truck was found with their dog and electronics inside, and cash hidden under the seat. On a frigid Christmas Eve in 1945, a fire erupted at the Sodder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The family, prominent Italian immigrants, were settling in for the night, unaware that their lives were about to be irrevocably fractured. George and Jenny Sodder escaped the inferno with 4 of their 9 children. But 5 remained trapped inside the rapidly collapsing structure. 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Martha, 9-year-old Louis, 8-year-old Jenny, and 5-year-old Betty. Panic turned to suspicion as a series of bizarre obstacles thwarted their rescue efforts. The family's ladder, always kept in its usual spot, was missing. Both of George's work trucks, known to be reliable, inexplicably would not start. When they ran to a neighbor's to call for help, they discovered the phone line was dead. By the time the fire department arrived hours later, the home was nothing but ash and rubble. The official investigation concluded with astonishing speed. The cause, faulty wiring. The fate of the children, death by a fire so intense it had supposedly cremated their bodies, leaving no bones behind. Death certificates were issued within days, but the family, especially Jenny, refused to accept this. Having worked at a crematorium, she knew that even after hours of intense controlled heat, human bones often survive. A 45-minute house fire simply could not have obliterated all 5 children without a trace. The family began to question the official story. The evidence for their death in the fire is purely circumstantial. A destroyed house, an undeniably intense blaze, and an official report that uses the fire's heat to explain the complete lack of physical remains. But the evidence for abduction is far more compelling. The conveniently missing ladder, the disabled trucks, a deliberately cut phone line, and a bus driver who later reported seeing the children peering from a passing car as the fire raged. Then, in 1967, a mysterious photograph arrived in the mail, purportedly showing a grown-up Louis Sodder. The family hired a private investigator to pursue this new lead, who then vanished without a trace himself. The central questions are maddeningly persistent. If the children died, where are their remains? If they were abducted, who took them? And why was no ransom ever demanded? The fire chief, F.J. Morris, who initially blamed faulty wiring, later admitted under oath that he found no evidence of an electrical problem and that the fire's origin was unknown. In a move that baffled the family, the site was bulldozed just days after the fire, burying any potential evidence under 5 feet of dirt. George later excavated the site himself, finding no bones, teeth, or any human remains. Pathologists and fire experts consulted by the family confirmed their suspicions, stating that even in the most extreme house fires, larger skeletal fragments like vertebrae and skull pieces should survive. Over the years, witnesses claimed to see the children at a hotel, in a car, even in Florida, but no motive, such as George's outspoken anti-Mussolini views, or suspects were ever officially confirmed. For over 30 years, the family's billboard on Route 16 stood as a haunting public plea, an enduring search for answers that never came. The official explanation, death by fire, is fundamentally undermined by the complete and scientifically improbable lack of remains. Yet the abduction theory is equally undermined by the total absence of a credible motive, confirmed suspects, or any subsequent contact. To accept a conclusion, one must believe either in a uniquely cremating house fire that defies forensic science, or a flawless, motiveless abduction that left no trace for decades. Decades later, the file remains open, a chilling testament to a family's grief, suspended between 2 deeply improbable scenarios. The Sodder case demonstrates how a profound lack of physical evidence can halt logic at the very threshold of truth, leaving only questions. For our next mystery, We turn to a beach south of Adelaide, Australia, and a nameless man whose only message read, "Tamam shud." On the morning of December 1st, 1948, a man was found on Somerton Park Beach, his head propped against a seawall. He was impeccably dressed in a suit and tie, his shoes polished, an unlit cigarette resting on his collar. There were no signs of violence, but also no identification. Every label on his clothing had been meticulously cut away, a deliberate act of erasure that deepened the mystery from the very first moment. His fingerprints were taken and circulated worldwide, but yielded no match. An autopsy revealed acute congestion in his organs and an enlarged spleen, but no definitive cause of death. Pathologists suspected a fast-acting, untraceable poison, one that could mimic natural causes. Yet, extensive toxicology tests came back negative, leaving investigators with a body full of contradictions. Months later, a tiny rolled-up piece of paper was discovered in a hidden fob pocket of the man's trousers. It bore two words, "Tamam shud," a Persian phrase meaning, "it is ended." The scrap was traced to the final page of a rare edition of The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. After a public appeal, a local man turned in the very copy, found tossed into the back of his unlocked car around the time of the man's death. On the book's back cover, faint pencil markings formed what appeared to be a code. Defense cryptanalysts studied the 5 lines of letters, but ultimately deemed it too short to solve without a key. The Cold War was escalating, and with the top-secret Woomera rocket range nearby, theories of espionage began to take hold. Was the Somerton man a spy, silenced before he could complete his mission? A phone number in the book led to a nearby nurse. When shown a plaster cast of the man's bust, she was visibly distressed, but denied knowing him. She did, however, admit to once owning a copy of the Rubaiyat. She had given her copy to an army lieutenant named Alfred Boxall. For a moment, police thought they had their man, but Boxall was soon found alive, his copy of the Rubaiyat intact, its final page untorn. The physical clues only added to the puzzle. The man had the athletic calves of a dancer or runner, yet his clean shoes suggested he'd been carried to the beach. His last meal was a pasty, but it wasn't from any local shops. Over the decades, crucial evidence, including a suitcase left at the railway station, was lost. The embalming process degraded his DNA, hindering modern testing and preserving his anonymity. In 2022, a researcher, using forensic genealogy on hairs trapped in the man's death mask, proposed an identity. But this finding remains unofficial and is not yet widely accepted by authorities. What is certain? A dead man. No identity. A code not definitively solved. What's not? His cause of death, his profession, his connections, or why he was on that beach. Tamam shud. An epitaph for a life and death that, even now, remain officially nameless. A ghost story written on a cold Australian shore. Next, a family vanishes into the Sans Bois Mountains, leaving a locked truck, a starving dog, and $32,000 in cash. On October 8, 2009, Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their 6-year-old daughter Madison drove into Oklahoma's remote Sans Bois Mountains. They were scouting a 40-acre plot of land they hoped to buy. They never returned. 8 days later, their locked truck was found abandoned. Inside were their wallets, purse, phones, and GPS. Also inside, their dog, Maisie, malnourished but still alive. A bank bag containing $32,000 in cash was hidden under the driver's seat. With no signs of a struggle and valuables left behind, robbery seemed unlikely. The family was simply gone. Massive searches involving hundreds of volunteers scoured the rugged terrain, but found no immediate clues to their whereabouts. 4 years later, in November 2013, deer hunters stumbled upon skeletal remains, 2 adults and 1 child, less than 3 miles from the truck. DNA confirmed the remains were the Jamesons, but years of exposure had erased all forensic signals. With no bullet holes or fractures found, the official cause of death remains undetermined. These cases share a pattern: concrete facts that fail to assemble into a single narrative. Sodder, a devastating fire, but no bodies. Somerton, a body, but no identity. Jameson, remains, but no cause of death. Time erodes evidence. Records go missing. Logic cannot bridge a gap where data is absent. If you have thoughts, share them below. Subscribe to Dark Data Files. The search continues, carefully and with clear eyes.